Homage to fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni. Homage to wisdom warrior Manjushri. Homage to all lineage benevolent masters. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in 1,000,000 eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize Tathagata's true meaning. In order to truly liberate all sentient beings from the endless cycle of samsara, it is essential to generate supreme and unwavering bodhicitta. Alright, you can now recite along with me if you wish. Next, let us diligently study together the profound section on the impermanence of life, a fundamental teaching derived from the revered text, the words of my perfect teacher. Within the profound and ever-present topic of the impermanence of all life, we should now thoroughly discuss the fifth crucial point. It inherently presents many significant meanings and insightful analogies. These powerful illustrations clearly demonstrate that human existence and life itself are undeniably impermanent. This principle is very important, yet many people do not understand it. Although, in essence, our lifespan and body are all impermanent because of our ignorance and self-clinging, and our habitual attachment to continuity. In this way, our mental continuum becomes tainted and obscured. In the end, we are unable to perceive the true nature of all phenomena. Therefore, when studying the Dharma, contemplating impermanence is extremely important. For this reason, many practitioners of the Kadampa tradition devoted themselves wholeheartedly to the practice of impermanence. Once one gains some understanding, realization, and insight into impermanence, at that crucial point, other profound Dharma practices become significantly much easier to genuinely accomplish and integrate into one's spiritual journey. So, in our consistent daily practice, we find ourselves truly engaging with these principles. We should not remain stuck at the level of words, nor rely on empty catchphrases. We should actually deeply contemplate and thoroughly understand it in practical application. In fact, the underlying principle is remarkably simple and straightforward to grasp. Anyone with a bit of understanding can grasp its content. But when it comes to actual practice, it truly becomes more and more difficult the deeper you go. At first, if you don't practice, you might think there's nothing to it. But once you reach a certain point in your practice, because your habitual attachment to permanence is so deeply rooted, it becomes quite difficult to completely break it all down at once, you see. Now, let us continue our study. Regarding the above principles, we should contemplate and reflect on them sincerely and wholeheartedly. Including the 4 reliances of the Kadampa school that we discussed yesterday, as well as the truth that all phenomena are impermanent, especially the principle that all who are born must inevitably die. We must develop a deep understanding of this. Next, we will discuss the topic of the higher you are, the harder you fall. Exalted positions and seemingly invincible armies, despite their apparent strength, are all ultimately impermanent and will not last forever. Let us consider a simple yet illustrative example. King Rulun was the golden wheel-turning monarch who ruled over the 4 great continents. He also presided over the heaven of the 33, standing on equal footing with Indra, the king of the gods. In his battles with the Asuras, he was always victorious. Yet in the end he fell from grace and died consumed by insatiable greed. Many Dharma friends have already studied this story before. His story can be found in the Buddha's biographies, such as the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish. It also appears in various other scriptures. Especially in Mipham Rinpoche's The Great Biography of Shakyamuni Buddha, the White Lotus Treatise, it is explained quite clearly and comprehensively in the dedicated section on generosity. In fact, King Rulun, at the very beginning, possessed the greatest merit and fortune in this entire world, a truly remarkable and unparalleled achievement. One could even say, in the human world, there has truly never been anyone whose status and wealth were as absolutely complete as King Rulun's indeed. No such person has ever truly appeared. Once there was a revered King Changjing, and from a prominent flesh protuberance on his head, a remarkable flesh egg emerged. After it gracefully split open, a child of extraordinary appearance and profound dignity was born. When he was born, all kinds of auspicious signs manifested throughout the entire kingdom. His many queens. At that particular time, he, the powerful ruler, majestically ruled over 84,000 small kingdoms and had 80,000 queens. All of these devoted queens collectively said, "Please, let this precious child nurse from me." Everyone called him that, and later people referred to him as the king nursed by me. He was also called the king born from the crown, because he was born from the top of the king's head, Later, through a physiognomist's reading, it was known that he would eventually become the golden wheel turning king. When he grew up, he ruled the entire human world with the help of the wheel treasure. The southern Jambudvipa, the northern Kuru, and the other 4 great continents. He brought happiness to the beings of the 4 great continents and would also teach wonderful Dharma in his daily life. Later, he felt that merely ruling the human world was not enough. He wanted to go to the heavenly realms. After arriving in the celestial heavenly realms, the 62 magnificent heavenly gates opened for him automatically. Many benevolent celestial beings set up grand thrones for him. The throne was just a little lower than that of the powerful Indra. At that significant time, he made another profound aspiration. He solemnly vowed that if his accumulated merit truly and undeniably manifested itself, then he should rightfully be considered on an equal footing with the mighty Indra. He made this significant vow at that precise moment in time, and after having articulated this powerful declaration, he truly did become entirely equal to the great Indra, whether in terms of his outward appearance, his eloquent manner of speaking, the profound extent of his virtues, and so forth. In every conceivable aspect, everything was exactly the same. The only difference was that Indra, as a celestial being, does not blink, while the wheel-turning king does. This is the distinction between humans and celestial beings. And also when they walked, Indra would walk a bit faster, while he could not walk as quickly. Other than that, there was no difference at all. He remained in this position equal to Indra for a very long time, because Indra is the king of the 33 heavens, and the position is constantly changing hands. Throughout this entire process of succession, he was always on equal footing with Indra. All offerings, service, and respect were given to him in the same way. Later, the heavenly king went to war with the Asuras. During the course of the battle, the powerful heavenly king was ultimately unable to achieve victory and consequently ended up concealing himself within the grand palace. The wheel-turning king relied on his miraculous powers and freely and gracefully flew through the vast sky high above the formidable Asuras. With his immense and overwhelming might, he powerfully struck profound fear into the very hearts of all the numerous Asuras. Naturally, they immediately fled and swiftly ran away in disarray, and thus he decisively defeated the Asuras, securing a complete victory. But later, he thought of the 36th generation of Indra, and at that time he thought, "Originally I was on equal footing with the heavenly king." He thought to himself, "Now with my immense and unparalleled power, I should undoubtedly surpass the current heavenly king. The entire vast heavens and the human world, in their entirety, should be rightfully ruled by me alone and by me exclusively. There absolutely shouldn't be anyone else with equal or comparable power ruling this magnificent world alongside me, sharing its dominion." When he gave rise to such an evil thought, because the Indra at that time was the previous life of Buddha Kashyapa, Mifam Rinpoche said that Kashyapa Buddha had especially great merit, because he gave rise to an evil thought towards such a worthy object, and also because the good karma he had accumulated before had been exhausted. He suddenly fell from grace and descended into the human world. In Jambudvipa, near his former royal palace. It was only at that precise moment then that he truly came to realize a profound truth. The inherent desires of all sentient beings, those with consciousness and feeling, can never be completely satisfied. Just before his passing, as his life was drawing to its inevitable close, he also spoke some deeply meaningful and insightful verses. Even if silver coins rain down, the greedy will never be satisfied. The wise, knowing the suffering and futility in sensual pleasures, do not pursue them. And so on. He gave many wonderful and profound teachings. So, through this insightful story, we can clearly understand that many people in this world often truly enjoy and actively seek out positions of immense power and significant status, but despite achieving these coveted positions, they are never truly, deeply satisfied. This includes people in the world today. For example, some individuals are profoundly eager to continually raise their own personal status higher and higher within their social circles. Many people, perhaps within society at large or among the general public, often strive for such advancements. Originally have an ordinary status and want to rise higher. Once they reach a certain level, they want to go even higher, constantly striving upward. This kind of desire will ultimately lead to ruin. Some esteemed masters have profound teachings. One particular master wisely said, "Desire ultimately destroys genuine hope." Indeed, desire has the potent ability to completely destroy one's most beautiful and cherished ideals or deeply held hopes. So, truly in this vast and intricate world, there are many, many individuals, countless people. Their own insatiable greed and their inherent desires are always completely uncontrollable, perpetually driving them forward. Especially for those who have never studied Buddhism, they have no idea at all. They endlessly rush forward, pursuing more and more. Once you truly learn the profound Dharma, you will then deeply understand this fundamental principle. You will come to realize that all worldly desires are inherently endless, and only at that moment do you genuinely understand. Some people, when they reach the halfway point in life and look back, will come to realize, "Turns out I walked the entire path in a daze, without any clear or defined goal, just simply muddling through life day by day." So, at that moment, when reflecting on one's actions, there is a sense of shame, a feeling of ignorance. I think this is especially true for those who have studied Buddhism more deeply and have developed firm understanding. Many people have such realizations. Next, let's talk about how, even in our current daily lives, we can observe kings of nations, leaders of religious sects, and local officials, among others. Anyone who holds power and influence, who enjoys high office and great wealth, none of them can remain in their position forever, unwavering and unchanged. Throughout the immensely long and winding river of human history, stretching back to the most ancient of times, we have witnessed the rise and reign of various powerful figures, whether it was a revered king ruling over a vast dominion, a democratically elected national president leading their country, or a diligent premier guiding governmental affairs, as well as the majestic emperors of bygone eras and the modern presidents of today, and so forth. These individuals have consistently shaped the course of civilization. All of these people are replaced generation after generation. Similarly, in every religious sect, whether it is Christianity, Taoism, Buddhism, or the leaders and popes of other religions, are also constantly and continuously being replaced. Local government officials, school teachers, and principals are all part of this ongoing process of change, and heads of various departments and so on are all continually being replaced, constantly demonstrating impermanence. So, to remain in one position forever, never changing, is something that has never, ever happened in the entire span of all human history. From this profound process, we can clearly see that all phenomena are indeed inherently impermanent. Now, for people in the world right before your eyes, many metaphors of impermanence or manifestations of impermanence are constantly appearing. But because we have never received education in this area, and at the very same time, our own understanding is often clouded by the pervasive delusion of permanence. As a result, we are truly unable to see the true nature of all phenomena. Of course, this truth inherently includes both subtle impermanence and gross impermanence. As for the subtle, moment-to-moment impermanence, that goes without saying. As for gross impermanence, the various changes of rise and fall, gain and loss in the world today, should be easily noticed by those with wisdom. However, most people simply do not take it to heart. That is why people are endlessly busy and rushing about every day. Why is that? Yet in the end, they never truly obtain what they seek. And when you fail to get it, why do you feel such deep sorrow? The reason is that we have not yet realized the true nature of all phenomena. It is precisely this reason that leads to such outcomes. Judges who handed down sentences to others last year may themselves end up behind bars this year, becoming prisoners. Such occurrences are all too common. What use is the status of impermanence then? Therefore, we must strive to attain the unchanging, unwavering, supremely worthy state of perfect enlightenment, honored by gods and humans alike. Indeed, in this ever-changing and often unpredictable world, it is a profound and frequently surprising reality that powerful figures such as esteemed judges, influential political leaders, and even national presidents, who, just last year or the year before, wielded immense authority to sentence and condemn others, later find themselves in the very same predicament, ending up incarcerated within prison walls. This striking reversal of fortune serves as a powerful and undeniable demonstration of the inherent impermanence of power, status, and worldly positions to all observers. Such remarkable and often ironic phenomena are increasingly observed nowadays, where some individuals, just by simply glancing at the daily news, you can readily observe these performances unfolding every single day. especially in today's increasingly complex society, with all kinds of deeply corrupt and extensively embezzling officials. They initially present themselves to others as figures of great purity and profound wisdom, but ultimately, they too end up falling into extremely painful and tragic circumstances. This particular kind of observable phenomenon is very frequently and commonly observed in various contexts and situations. For example, Chen Liangyu, the former party secretary of Shanghai, a major economic hub in China, was formally sentenced in April of last year, specifically in 2008, following a high-profile corruption investigation and trial. At that time, I distinctly recall seeing a prominent global media outlet specifically named World Executive Digest. This publication featured a significant special report that had been submitted directly to Zhongnanhai. The report explicitly stated that a dedicated special inspection team was dispatched to thoroughly investigate. During the course of this extensive investigation, which took place in major banks across the bustling city of Shanghai, some of these accounts were maintained under completely anonymous names, some were established under demonstrably false names, and still others were operated under various distinct aliases. There were approximately 1,322 such illicit accounts identified, with their collective deposits totaling an astonishing 98.6 billion RMB. At that time, Chen Liangyu was found to possess a substantial number of accounts, specifically 53, which collectively held a considerable sum of nearly 300 million RMB. If the details presented in this particular report are indeed accurate and verifiable, it is important to note that he was subsequently sentenced to a significant term of 18 years in prison. Through a careful examination of some of their illustrative examples, we can gain further insight into the complexities of the situation. First, they held the highest positions in society, only to end up in tragic circumstances. Perhaps people with wisdom can immediately recognize that impermanence has truly manifested before their eyes. How glorious and magnificent he was before, just 2 days ago, on the 23rd of this month. The president of South Korea, Roh Moo-hyun, should have already stepped down, right? He recently committed suicide by jumping off a cliff. What was the reason? He claimed he was an honest official, but due to various investigations and all kinds of political pressure, he simply couldn't bear it anymore, left a will and took his own life. But as for what really happened, it's hard for any of us to say. So sometimes the fate of people in such positions, I think, is very easy to see, including the prominent figure of Chen Shui-bian from Taiwan, who notably served as the president for a full 8-year term. In the end, he too, unfortunately, found himself facing a rigorous trial. So, for some individuals, the immense glory and widespread acclaim they experienced at the very beginning of their public careers, and the truly miserable and unfortunate fate they ultimately meet in the end. When one carefully and thoughtfully compares these two starkly contrasting phases, I believe it becomes exceptionally and unequivocally clear. There are many examples of impermanence in this world. This kind of phenomenon, like Chen Keje from Guangxi in the past. And in the year 2006, there was also the notable figure of Gao Yong, who was the former esteemed head of the publicity department within the city of Chengdu, among others. From carefully observing their various actions and behaviors, one can clearly and unequivocally discern that the pervasive phenomenon of impermanence, this inherent lack of stability and permanence, truly can be observed and witnessed at virtually any given moment in time throughout the entire world, manifesting in countless ways and situations. Including some of the esteemed abbots of various temples, or certain significant changes observed among the lay practitioners in their daily lives, such as changes in mindset, changes in status, and so on. From these various and pervasive phenomena that surround us in our daily lives, we can clearly and unequivocally see that the fundamental concept of impermanence, the transient nature of all things, is indeed very easy to observe and recognize. If we can fully and deeply understand the profound principle of impermanence, truly grasping its implications and pervasive influence, then when many challenging or seemingly unfortunate things and events in this world inevitably happen to us, we will not feel that we are inherently unlucky, nor will we experience profound suffering or distress, as our perspective will be fundamentally altered by this understanding. And when they happen to others, we will also understand. Therefore, this practice is very important for us. It is still very necessary in our daily lives. If you truly learn these principles well,
In this world, you will see that everything is like a dream or an illusion. Nothing is permanent or stable. Such understanding will give rise to firm conviction. Therefore, what we should pursue is the true Buddhahood, worthy of offerings from humans and gods. This is our eternal, most fundamental, and ultimate goal. But those temporary things that have harmful attribution and will eventually be lost, such as status, wealth, and power, are ultimately of no real use. Everyone naturally has a certain habit. Even within a small group, people still compete for status. For example, among 3 people, one may be the main figure, and the other 2 will also compete for his position. This is the nature of a competitive society. But if you examine such positions carefully, especially those prominent figures who rule many countries in this world, or some truly remarkable individuals, in the end, what kind of state do they end up in? At such times, from deep within, one should have aspiration only for the Dharma or for an unchanging state of realization. Apart from that, nothing else should be of interest. That is why, after many Buddhists study these teachings on impermanence, they no longer actively seek status or compete with others. This profound shift is also a direct and natural result of spiritual practice. Because once you fully understand this principle, you'll find that what others pursue seems to have no real meaning. We must contemplate and deeply reflect on the above principles with great care. This isn't just something to say casually. This kind of practice isn't something you can just gloss over. You should earnestly contemplate and reflect on it yourself. Ask yourself if this is truly the case. If it really is so, then how should we approach it in our daily lives? This is very important. Many people understand the principle of impermanence on a superficial level, but aside from a very few, there are not many who truly practice it. It's hard to say how many people have genuinely cultivated the Dharma of impermanence in their hearts. This depends on one's own regular contemplation and reflection. What we've discussed above is that even high status is not truly reliable. Next, we'll talk about how even the relationships between loved ones and enemies are not permanent or stable. Both loved ones and enemies are also impermanent. In the past, Venerable Katyayana went out to beg for alms. He saw a benefactor holding his son in his arms, eating fish meat with great relish. At the same time, he was using a stone to hit a mother dog that was gnawing on a bone. When Venerable Katyayana went into the city to beg for alms, he witnessed this scene. A benefactor was holding a very adorable child. Then he was eating fish meat with great enjoyment. When I was young at home, I never dared to eat it. Whenever our school served fish, I felt miserable. On those days, I could only eat a little rice and couldn't eat anything else. But for many of you, whenever fish is mentioned, even some monastics, those who have dedicated their lives to spiritual practice, start to struggle. This is because old habits, deeply ingrained from their past lives, often resurface. After all, you used to eat it in big, hearty mouthfuls, didn't you? It might very well be the actual flesh of your beloved parents, or perhaps of your cherished relatives and dear friends. So now you should wipe your mouth clean and sincerely repent. At that time, the man was eating fish while hitting a female dog with a stone. The Venerable One, possessing supernatural powers, observed the situation through his abilities. He discovered that the fish was actually the benefactor's father reincarnated, and the female dog was his mother reincarnated. The child he was holding in his arms was actually his enemy from a previous life, reincarnated as his son to repay karmic debts. After understanding this truth, the Venerable One recited the following verse. Because the entire process was extremely rare and unusual, the child he was lovingly holding was in fact the enemy who had killed him in a previous life. The meat he was eating with great relish was actually his father. The one he hated so much and threw stones at was not someone from his current life. At that time, perhaps his parents had already passed away. But after his parents died, they immediately reincarnated into his own household. So sometimes, indeed, our own relatives often reincarnate as sentient beings who are karmically connected to us. Therefore, in our daily lives, the meat we have eaten or the people we have harmed in the past may actually have been our own loved ones. And those we are deeply attached to, whether emotionally or as parent and child, those to whom we are especially attached, are often our enemies from past or present lives, who have come to collect debts and now appear before us. So now, if we observe from the perspective of true Buddhist teachings, when we are especially attached to someone, feel deep affection for them and like them very much, it actually means that this particular person is indeed your karmic enemy. Nowadays, there are often young people who ask me, I have an especially close relationship with so-and-so. I can't live without them. I think about them every day. They ask me, do you think we were husband and wife in a past life? Were we connected in a previous life? I often tell them, you were definitely karmic enemies in your past life. This isn't without scriptural basis. It is indeed the case. If in this life you feel that without this person, you absolutely have to jump off a building or can't go on living in this world. This kind of emotion and attachment definitely arises from karmic debts of enmity from past lives. In this life, the people you feel intense hatred toward, it shows that in your past lives and this life, you were mutually deeply attached. That's why, even among people in the world today, sometimes they start out extremely attached, but end up hating each other intensely. This also happens. Therefore, the Venerable Gadayana, after witnessing such rare and extraordinary situations, he composed a spiritual song like this. Eating the flesh of one's father, beating one's mother, embracing those who once sought to kill oneself, wives gnawing on the bones of their husbands, such is the rare nature of samsara. He turned the previous story into this verse. Those who are mortal enemies in this life may later potentially become like-minded friends and even form incredibly close and enduring bonds. Such truly extraordinary and remarkable connections are not at all uncommon in the grand scheme of things. So, regarding the story I just told earlier, people in this world really need to understand this. I hope you all do. Some may think this is just a legend from the Buddhist scriptures or simply a story. Whether you choose to understand it in your life or not, you must never think that way. You must truly and deeply understand this principle. When you do, your profound attachment to both your cherished loved ones and your perceived enemies will naturally and gradually begin to fade away. If such a deep-seated attachment truly fades, it will undoubtedly and significantly benefit your spiritual practice and overall well-being. Otherwise, you will always be trapped in worldly, mundane concepts and unable to break free. In that particular case, as dedicated practitioners, we truly and genuinely won't be able to cultivate ourselves well and achieve significant spiritual growth. Therefore, you must fully understand the profound karmic connections of enmity stemming from past lives. There are also similar stories in the Vinaya Sutra. For example, there was a man who loved his son dearly more than anything. But later, for the sake of his son, he committed many negative deeds and eventually passed away. At the time of his death, he was still deeply attached to his child. In the end, he was tragically reborn as a humble cow, becoming one of his very own livestock. His son then cruelly killed the cow and consumed its meat. The second time, he was once again reborn at the familiar entrance of his son's house, and his son, without recognition, killed him yet again. The third time, he was once more reborn at the very entrance of his son's house, continuing this unfortunate cycle. Because cows typically grow up fully after a few short years, by the third time, the Venerable Shariputra, a prominent and respected disciple of the Buddha, appeared at the very doorstep of his son's humble abode. At that precise moment, he distinctly heard the persistent and mournful sound of a cow, constantly mooing with a deep and resonant bellow, echoing loudly through the quiet surroundings. Using his supernatural powers, he observed to find out what the cow was actually saying. At that time, the cow kept talking to itself. I've already come here twice, and both times you killed me, my beloved son. Now you're preparing to kill me again, and I feel extremely miserable. I really can't bear it, but I have no way to resist. At this point, the Venerable One told the family about it. Afterwards, they released the cow and did not kill it. There are also such stories in the Buddhist scriptures. So indeed, the very meat you consume in your daily life and the various things around you, these are still deeply and profoundly connected to your past lives. I distinctly remember that there are many truly wonderful stories in the Madhyama Agama Sutra. When it's convenient, fellow practitioners should also read them often. You should read these meaningful teachings about cause and effect and making choices. Nowadays, people don't like to read the real classics and treatises. They only read things about war and pornography. Not only are these meaningless for one's own mind stream, but they are also very harmful and damaging. Frequently flipping through such books is unreasonable. In the Madhyama Agama Sutra, there is a story about someone named Duti. His father was reborn as a dog and would come to his house to steal food and drink. There are indeed stories of this nature. There was also another person named Chandana whose father had been reborn as a beggar in his next life. When his father came to his house to beg, his son became extremely angry. He forcefully dragged him out, and his father's arm was tragically broken in the very doorway. There are quite a few, indeed many poignant stories like this that illustrate similar unfortunate events. So, in our daily lives, when we inevitably encounter various enemies with whom we have deep, intricate karmic connections, or even humble beggars who approach us, seeking assistance or perhaps just a moment of our time, or people we really dislike or even detest, when they appear in front of you, you should silently recite Avalokiteshvara's mantra in your heart. And on the other hand, you should try your best to give alms and take good care of them. In some legends from Tibet, for example, when a person is sitting somewhere and some mosquitoes or bees come and they keep circumambulations, you not leaving. Some mosquitoes go buzz, especially in the city when you're sleeping at night, buzz. When they're by your ear, you shouldn't be especially annoyed. Wow, immediately, smack, you kill it, you shouldn't do that. Maybe it's your relative coming specifically to ask you for some food or something. At this time, you can either recite Avalokiteshvara's mantra or make offerings. This is also very important. Generally speaking, according to the Lankavatara Sutra, the meat that we are consuming and eating now in this very moment is profoundly believed to be the very flesh of our parents from countless past lives, or indeed the flesh of our own cherished relatives from previous existences. There is an incredibly deep and intricate connection that is said to exist between us and the animals whose flesh we partake in, a bond that transcends ordinary understanding and extends across many lifetimes and familial ties. When I see sentient beings eating each other's flesh, it is nothing but the flesh of their own loved ones. What this means is, the Buddha said, I observe sentient beings. If we eat the meat of any animal, then that animal has a familial connection with us from a past life. In other words, if I eat beef today, it means that this yak was a relative of mine in a previous life. If I eat pork today, then in a past life, it was also a close relative of mine. So not eating meat in our daily lives is a very good thing. The merit from this is also inconceivable. Everyone must truly understand this principle. If we can truly realize that within this cycle of birth and death, we are constantly being reborn, taking turns, becoming each other's fathers and mothers. If we can deeply comprehend this truth, we will develop a sense of renunciation toward all the joys and sorrows within samsara, and we won't cling to them so stubbornly. Not only in India and Tibet are there such stories about this. Previously, when I taught the letter to a friend, I also spoke about the story of Chan Master Jigong from Han regions. A father becomes a son, a mother becomes a wife. When explaining this verse, Chan Master Jigong from Han regions was actually the national teacher of Emperor Wu of Liang. People commonly and widely regard him as a profound and compassionate emanation of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, who is revered as the Bodhisattva of compassion in Mahayana Buddhism. Once upon a time, the esteemed Chan Master, known for his deep spiritual insight and profound understanding of the Dharma, attended a wedding ceremony. After he arrived at the joyous occasion, it became immediately apparent that the Chan Master possessed not only extraordinary transcendent wisdom, allowing him to perceive truths beyond ordinary comprehension, but also remarkable supernatural powers, which were a testament to his advanced spiritual cultivation and enlightenment. When he arrived as everyone was gathering, he saw, just as Venerable Gadayana had discovered earlier, the entire situation inside, including the special relationships between the main participants of the wedding and other people present. The Chan Master felt a deep sense of revulsion and immediately began to sing some Dharma songs. The content of these Dharma songs included various scenarios. He said, strange and ancient, ancient and strange. A grandson marries his grandmother. A woman eats her mother's bones. A son beats a drum made from his father's skin. And so on. He recited this verse. He said, it's extremely strange, very rare. Why is that? Because the grandson married his grandmother. What does that mean? On that day, the bride whom the groom married was actually the reincarnation of his grandmother. Because when his grandmother passed away, she was especially attached to her grandson, always thinking about him. When she died, she was holding his hand. So in Tibet, there is a certain custom. When someone is about to die, you must never let them hold your hand. Otherwise, their soul will keep clinging to you. So when some people are dying, if they reach out their hand, you really shouldn't go near them. Otherwise, if they really grab your neck or your hand, after some time, they might appear to you in a dream or in some other way. There was once a person whose younger sister died. Before his sister passed away, she kept calling for him, asking her brother to come over. Her brother was very scared and immediately called me saying, "She might be about to die, but I don't dare get close. What if she grabs me? If she grabs me, what should I do if her soul clings to me afterwards?" Actually, there is some truth to what he said, because when his grandmother passed away, she died holding her grandson's hand. After she died, she was reincarnated. Because her attachment to him was so strong, she was later reborn as a girl. When she grew up, the grandson ended up marrying his grandmother. So the saying, "the grandson marries the grandmother," comes from this kind of story. Then, when the venerable Zen master entered the inner room, there was a young girl eating meat. It seemed like she was vigorously gnawing on a pig's trotter. Through his profound wisdom, he observed that the young girl's mother had been tragically reincarnated as a pig. On the auspicious day of the wedding, the unfortunate pig was slaughtered and the girl was eating her mother's meat. Then, when he went out into the courtyard, there was a person beating a donkey-hide drum with all his might, continuously striking the drum. He realized that this person's father had been reincarnated as a donkey. After the unfortunate donkey was tragically killed, its sturdy hide was meticulously made into a resonant drum, and that's precisely what he was vigorously beating with great enthusiasm. Then, with a sense of renewed purpose, he slowly walked outside once again. He observed everyone joyfully and harmoniously singing, gracefully dancing, and warmly gathering together in a vibrant communal celebration. He continued to sing, saying, with a heartfelt and melodious voice, "Pigs and sheep sit on the kang, while relatives are boiling in the pot. Everyone comes to celebrate, but I say it's the suffering of suffering bitter." It was something like this. When he entered the house, the people sitting on the kang were actually pigs and sheep from previous lives, now reincarnated as humans. Today they were joyfully gathered together. In a big pot, there was a lot of meat being cooked. In fact, these were the relatives and loved ones from previous lives. This time they had become animals. After being slaughtered, their meat was cooking in the pot. So the entire wedding celebration that day, the whole scene of the wedding, after the master understood it through his wisdom and supernatural insight, he felt that, although people felt that today was a very joyful day, in reality, these displays of samsara were truly laughable. It is also very rare and extremely painful. If we could truly realize this, would we still be willing to do such things? Probably no one would be willing, everyone would be afraid. But because on one hand, we ourselves lack supernatural powers or knowledge of past lives, and on the other hand, we know nothing about karma and its consequences, we often find ourselves doing many foolish things that are genuinely hard to describe in mere words. Therefore, we should deeply reflect that many things in this vast world actually have no true or real meaning whatsoever. We must truly understand the contemplation of impermanence. I remember in the Dhammapada Sutra of Parables, it should be in the Tripitaka, there's a text called the Dhammapada Sutra of Parables. In the Dhammapada Sutra of Parables, there's also a story quite similar to this one. At that time, there was a Brahmin who was especially stingy. Every time he ate, he would shut the door tightly. I see that some of our fellow practitioners are like this too, aren't they? Usually around noon, smoke would rise from the stove. The door was always pushed, however. It couldn't be opened. I have a few fellow practitioners nearby who are like this. Then, surprisingly, after finishing their meal, the door would be opened. This family was also extremely stingy. Once, while eating, he slaughtered a chicken. Then he, his wife, and his child. The three of them began to eat the chicken with great relish. At that time, Shakyamuni Buddha, through his wisdom, observed the conditions for subduing him had already matured. He then manifested as a Shramana, appearing in the form of an ordinary monk. He displayed miraculous powers and came into the courtyard. At that moment, the Brahmin was extremely angry. He said, "You shameless person. How could you barge in without the door being opened?" He started scolding him. Later, the Shramana, with a calm and measured tone, said, "Actually, you are even more utterly shameless and truly ignorant. You brutally killed your own biological father and then married your very own mother, and you even treat the one who tragically killed you as your own beloved child and diligently provide for him." Then the Brahmin, not understanding, asked about the reason behind this. Afterwards, the Shramana explained in detail, the chicken you killed this time is actually the reincarnation of your father, and the child you are supporting was actually a Rakshasa in a previous life who specifically sought your life. But now he has become the one you are providing for, and so on. He described to him all the details of the roles played throughout the cycle of samsara. Later, this person also developed a sense of renunciation towards samsara. Through the teachings of this Shramana and the power of the Buddha, he was able to recall his past lives and the related causes and conditions. Eventually, he attained the first fruition. There are stories like this as well. Therefore, in the Buddhist scriptures, there are indeed many rich and detailed stories about karma and its effects, including what we previously discussed in On Past and Present Lives. Although the plot details are slightly different, there are also similar cases. So for everyone present here, sometimes we share a few more cases as examples. Since everyone has different levels of wisdom, each person gains different benefits from different aspects. For example, with a certain case, one person might find it extremely fascinating, and then he will always remember this case in his heart. If you remember the content of a single case, then in your future life, you could say you'll have more room to make choices. If we know nothing about these principles, I'm afraid that we will just sink deeper and deeper into this predicament. So I truly believe that a profound understanding of Buddhism is extremely important and essential for our well-being. Your understanding of many aspects can't happen in just one day, as if a stone suddenly falls in front of you and you instantly become a sage. It's just not possible. But in your heart, the right and proper view of cause and effect and the process of making choices becomes increasingly and progressively more and more refined and precise over time. This understanding becomes increasingly accurate. On the other hand, even biological parents and siblings may harbor resentment and even harm each other over a small amount of property or benefits. Earlier, I spoke positively, saying that relatives and friends all have different karmic connections from past lives. But if we look at it the other way, even if they are your own flesh and blood, your biological parents, but for the sake of some trivial possessions or minor matters or even just words, the relationship can be ruined. This kind of situation is actually quite common. Even between spouses or relatives, there are cases where, due to some temporary, trivial matters, they turn against each other, even to the point of mutual harm. Such occurrences are also very common. In this world, many relationships don't require major events to break. Sometimes just a few words are enough. The way of the bodhisattva also discusses many such principles. So for ordinary people, it's also very easy to form relationships. If you give someone a little bit of wealth or say a few kind words, or even just offer a small smile, you can instantly become their closest friend. Likewise, it's also very easy for people who were once inseparable, very good friends or relatives, to fall out simply because of certain people in between. For example, when you encounter difficulties and they don't come to see you, you become very angry, and from then on, you ignore them completely. Or sometimes during a conversation, someone uses inappropriate language with you, and from then on, you stop talking to them. Generally speaking, it is very difficult to please ordinary people. It's hard to truly meet their expectations. This is very common among ordinary people. So in the journey of life, many people should have experienced this. Relationships between people are very complicated, but if you want to build a good relationship, it can also be quite easy. Sometimes just saying a kind word or giving a small gift is enough. For example, we see some people, if someone gives them even a little something, they'll say, "Oh, this was given to me by so-and-so." To them, it's a priceless treasure. They'll always treat it as a Chetsen Nyingtik. There are people like this too. But if, just once, you don't give them something or you give it to someone else, for this reason, they immediately turn into an enemy. So the relationship between closeness and resentment, whether it's among family members or any other kind of relationship, is rarely everlasting. This is a fact. Many people can recognize this from their own experiences. This shows that whether friends or enemies, all relationships are impermanent and constantly changing. Therefore, we should truly cherish all sentient beings with a compassionate heart. This is indeed a principle of Mahayana Buddhism that will never be destroyed. It is a noble spirit that is truly worth our study. When we hold an unfeigned compassion that is a truly loving heart and treat every sentient being with such an attitude, this is something that each of us, as Dharma friends, who have studied the way of the Bodhisattva, should be able to relate to. Sometimes I even feel truly ashamed. Many of our dedicated and selfless teachers truly dedicate everything they have, often without any concern for their own personal well-being or needs. Such truly altruistic and compassionate minds in this often challenging and complex world are a rare and invaluable presence, have made indelible contributions to the propagation of the Dharma and the salvation of sentient beings. But as later practitioners, can we achieve the same? Sometimes when I am alone in the process of quietly reflecting, I feel very ashamed, especially when my selfishness is strong. No matter what I encounter, there are always many difficulties and pains. Because of various reasons, I end up generating countless afflictions. So all the monastics and lay practitioners present must make a vow to do our best to emulate the great masters and accomplished teachers of the past and treat all living beings equally with a heart of compassion. Whether it's your own biological siblings or those enemies you resent, all of them, if we treat them all equally while we are still ordinary beings, it may be somewhat difficult. But we must understand in principle that only by doing so can such feelings be everlasting, stable, and not easily changed. Otherwise, our personal relationships and private closeness today can easily turn into enmity after some time. Therefore, it is very important to have this kind of attitude toward all sentient beings. Next, it is mentioned that both suffering and happiness are impermanent. Some people are very wealthy and happy in the first half of their lives, but in the latter half they become poor and destitute. In some of my memories, when I was young, I saw some people who were leaders, wealthy, had status and fortune, but now, looking at these people, they are left with nothing to rely on and are truly pitiable. There are also quite a few people who have fallen to the level of beggars, and there are some who suffered greatly in the first half of their lives, but found happiness and fulfillment in the latter half. In the past, especially when I was young, some people were called landlords at the time. Back then, class struggle was promoted, and many people suffered greatly during that period. Later, because the country's policies changed, now they are happy with wealth and status. There are such cases as well. Within just a few remarkably short decades, their entire fate underwent a truly complete and profound transformation. There are also people who were beggars in the first half of their lives, but became kings in the latter half. Many Buddhist scriptures and stories contain numerous such cases. For example, the uncle of the Venerable Milarepa. In the morning, he held a grand wedding banquet for his son's marriage. But by the afternoon, his house had collapsed and he was wailing in grief. The truly tragic situation was simply unimaginable. At that difficult time, it was his beloved uncle and his dear aunt, because they were the main ones who harmed Milarepa. After Milarepa had diligently learned sorcery on the very day of their grand banquet and wedding celebration, he powerfully used his formidable sorcery, and on that fateful day, approximately 35 people, unfortunately, because on that particular day, a powerful stallion cruelly bullied a gentle mare. And then, in a display of collective defense, the other horses vigorously kicked at the horses, demonstrating their strong disapproval and protective instincts. It seems that at that time, a pillar was broken and the house collapsed. Sometimes it seemed that his uncle's family was very wealthy at the time. But still, if a single horse could kick down a pillar, it shows that the building wasn't like those with concrete pillars. So the whole house collapsed and all 35 people inside. It seems that the uncle and aunt at that time wanted them to witness the entire process, so they didn't die. But all the others died, all in a single day. Last year's Wenchuan earthquake and many other similar incidents, the 9/11 incident in the United States. 9/11 was originally considered their most auspicious day, but the terrorists also targeted this and then chose that very day to bring them pain. So in this world, there are many situations where in an instant people are extremely happy, but just a few minutes later they are plunged into an ocean of suffering. Such phenomena are very common. This is also the impermanence of happiness and suffering. When extremely happy, we shouldn't think, oh, I will always be happy. We can't think like that. And when in great pain, you also shouldn't think you will always be in pain, nor should you think that way. However, what is different is that in seeking the Dharma, even though one may temporarily endure hardships and go through many trials, in the end, the suffering will give way to happiness and one will ultimately attain supreme bliss. Just like the Buddhas of the past who transcended the world and accomplished masters of previous generations, such as Jetsun Milarepa, Therefore, if we endure hardships for the sake of seeking the Dharma, it is truly worthwhile, necessary, and meritorious. So in order to obtain even a single teaching, whether it is to receive a bit of transmission or to engage in practice, no matter how much suffering you experience in life in this regard, whether it is lacking food and clothing or going through any kind of hardship, you must accept it. Especially when we are relatively young, if we endure great hardship and make significant efforts to seek the Dharma, then in your later years and even in life after life, you will surely experience supreme happiness. This can also be seen from the biography of Milarepa. Whether in Tibet, in Han regions, or anywhere in the world, there is no one who does not praise Jetsun Milarepa. Everyone should understand just how much ascetic hardship he endured during his spiritual practice. But in the end, the realization and attainment he achieved benefited countless people. So for many people here, if you practice, you will definitely attain realization and accomplishment. There is no doubt about this. The key is whether we can truly put in the effort during our studies and the process of listening and contemplation, let alone being like Milarepa, even among some people in the world today. If you read the biographies of the great masters and eminent monks of Han Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism, you will immediately understand. During their process of seeking knowledge, they made a firm resolve and then earnestly devoted themselves to study and practice. By the time they reached old age, they were completely different from ordinary sentient beings. Whether it was their realization or their altruistic mind, when a person attains realization, they will definitely radiate the light of altruism and the wisdom of enlightenment. When this light shines forth, countless others will also benefit from it. This is a natural law. If, during one's own practice, there is no insight or realization, perhaps by chance you might gain some status or academic degree. But such good fortune will not last long. After a while, it will also disappear. Therefore, each of us, regardless of our identity, should still cultivate through practicing the Dharma. It is truly necessary for some realization to arise within our own mind streams. Such realization does not arise without cause or reason. One must put in the effort oneself. Whether you are a wise person or not, as long as you make the effort, the realization you gain will be proportional to the effort you put in. This is certain. So many of us, through such preliminary practices efforts, I think the significance is tremendous and we must contemplate it repeatedly. Otherwise, if you do not value the preliminary practices, many people now, after coming here, do not ask for the words of my perfect teacher. Instead, they ask, can I have the most profound book on secret teachings? The book itself is not a problem, but if you do not even understand the basic principles of impermanence, then no matter how good the book is, it will be of no use. For example, in an ordinary elementary school, if someone cannot even grasp the formulas for addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, if you specifically take a third-year undergraduate mathematics textbook, it's fine to have that book in your hands. But if you haven't built a solid foundation, you still won't understand it, even if you read it. Even if you seem to understand it on the surface, it may not actually benefit your mind stream. Therefore, what we hope for first is to lay a solid foundation. This is something I have emphasized to everyone again and again, repeatedly. After emphasizing this, I think many people will, in their future practice, progress step by step. With such gradual and consistent progress, there will definitely be truly excellent and remarkable results. All right, we will stop our discussion here for today. What a truly wonderful and insightful talk it was, filled with profound wisdom. I have been diligently teaching the profound Dharma in this serene and beautiful mountain valley for over 20 long and dedicated years, sharing its timeless truths with all who seek them. I've never received such a warm welcome before. Today is the first time.
Om